On today's episode of Locked On Lightning, we're talking about the big win up in Toronto. The Lightning look better and better each game. We'll talk about that as well. All that and more on Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Dankert. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Locked On Lightning. On today's episode, we're talking about that big win last night in Toronto. The Lightning inch ever closer. They close the gap once again in the division towards Toronto. We talk about some of the big performances from that game, as well as taking a look at tonight's game in Montreal. But before we grab any of those topics, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube, so go ahead, subscribe to our channel there. Hit that notification button so as soon as the newest episode drops, you'll be notified. So, man, what a satisfying win last night, huh? I spoke about it yesterday. There's something about going up to Canada, playing at Scotiabank and beating the Leafs. Because, yeah, those first two games that the Lightning played against them this year, those were games, obviously, and Leafs fans might think otherwise, but those were games where the Lightning were a shell of the team that they are today. And going up, playing on their turf, especially with one game left in the books at Amalie, the thing that really stuck out to me in this game was not only the fact that the Lightning basically were in control from the onset, and the numbers, like, I always say is kind of the mantra here on Locked On Lightning, is that, yes, we take a look at the numbers, and we take that into account, but at the same time, they don't tell the entire story. When you look at this game last night, if you watched it, even if you looked at highlights, you saw two different stories going on, two different teams that if you weren't aware of where they were in the standings, you would have thought that the Lightning were much higher up in the standings than the Maple Leafs. Because last night, you saw a Lightning team that was playing with the most confidence that we have seen them play all season long. And that's the thing that I've spoken about numerous times in the past couple of weeks about this Lightning team, is that they are becoming more and more dangerous game by game. Every game that they win is another notch under their belt, another boost to their confidence. And that's the whole thing with this Lightning team, is that, and that's really with any team in the NHL, is that the more confident you are, the more unbeatable you feel, and the more dangerous you become. And on the other side of that, you had a Toronto team that, yes, the numbers tell a different story. Shots on goal, they looked like they were the more aggressive team in this game. They dominated the faceoff circle last night. They executed better on the power play. If you count going 1 for 4 versus 0 for 3, sure. But other than that, they weren't really separated by much. And you saw a Toronto team, which really has been the theme, in my opinion, for the Maple Leafs. Now, you could probably get a better sense of where the Leafs have been over the last couple of years. Go ahead and tune into Locked On Maple Leafs. But from the outside looking in, this is a team that, if things don't go their way from the onset, things fall apart very quickly. And then you get a team that is basically treading water for the rest of the game. And the Lightning fed off of that. You could tell right away. You could tell even as the game went on, things weren't really working out for the Leafs, especially that second period. You saw one team kind of just expecting something to happen. And the Lightning, looking at that and just going about their business, and that kind of opened things up more. I mean, this was a 3-1 game going into the third, but really it felt like it could have been a four-goal margin at that point. And you saw it in the Stamkos goal. You saw it in the Paul goal. The Lightning had a ton of confidence. They felt like they could go out there and pretty much do anything. And that is something that, like I said, was really going to play into their favor going into a game like this. And that is something that is really should really be exciting for the Lightning fandom going forward. Because if you have guys not only having one instance of a no look, a fainting pass look that turns into a shot, and then another later on in a game, twice in the span of a game. And if you have guys that are confident in doing that, because really on a nightly basis, we only see that from Kucherov. And now you get two in the same game. And that's just when you know guys are feeling it. That coupled with what I said was really going to be the key to this game for the Lightning and also going forward through the last couple of weeks of the regular season, getting production from your blue line. We'll talk about that in the second segment, but I don't think a lot of people are aware how big that Hedman goal was. How establishing that threat from early on was really something that I think lived in the back of the minds of the Maple Leafs for the entirety of the game. And that's what opened everything up down low. That's what we saw happen with the point goal. It's not many times you see a team kind of just forget about Braydon Point in a high danger area. But that's what you got, and he kind of took his sweet time dangling around the Leafs goaltender. But this was a game where really you asserted your dominance and kind of sent a message to the Maple Leafs, and that was, we're coming for you. And we could beat you here. We could beat you back home. We could definitely beat you in the playoffs. And like I said, when you look at the Maple Leafs, I'm sure it's going to stick with them because I'm sure there's some Maple Leafs fans looking or watching or listening to this podcast right now. And I'm going to say it, and I'm sure I'm going to hear it from you guys, and that's great. I always do anyway. Your team is mentally weak. You could throw Austin Matthews in my face all day. You could throw, we beat you in the playoffs last year. La-di-da. Okay? You guys crumble almost instantaneously, like I said, when things don't go your way. You barely beat the Lightning last year in the playoffs, and we both know. A better rested Lightning team, that series definitely goes a different way. And you're seeing now in the later stages, game 1 of 2 to end the season, different Lightning team. It's a different scenario. So let me know in the comments below, what was your favorite parts from that game? If you're a Lightning fan, let me know what your least favorite parts from that game. If you're a Leafs fan listening to this, and I'm sure I have quite a few listening on to hear about my take on this game. So coming up next, we're going to talk about the blue liners from this game. Like I said in the preview of yesterday's episode, how important it was going to be for Victor Hedman and co. to really get things started. and to really, like I said before, establish that look from the blue line. And we'll continue to talk about really putting an emphasis on that part of the game for the Tampa Bay Lightning. But first, I want to talk about our first sponsor of today's show, and that is our friends over at eBay Motors. Now, passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motor has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your MVP, your car, the MVP, and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So as always, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Go ahead to subscribe to our channel there. Comment below, please. I want to hear all your feedback because this is, I told you, this was going to be a game where I fully expected the Lightning to win. And I'm going to stick to my guns. The Leafs are a mentally weak team. And with the way that the Lightning are playing now, they feast off of those kind of teams. And you could see it right away after, especially in the second period. You know, you could only stick with those teams for so long. If you're a team that kind of is already treading water, you know, we've seen it in years past. I firmly believe that, you know, you could say, well, they won a playoff series last year. Leafs have imposter syndrome. That's, if I was a Leafs fan, that would be my diagnosis. This team has imposter syndrome. They truly don't believe in their heart of hearts that they belong with the top crop of the NHL, especially in the East. So we're looking at one of the keys to last night's game, as well as one of the keys going forward for this Lightning team, because it only made my point yesterday in the preview that much more credible. And that is offensive production from this blue line. Because like I've said, not only this year, I've said it in years past. You could look at the 2020 Stanley Cup team and how they performed as kind of just the base example of all that, as well as the subsequent year if you want to do that as well. But this Lightning team, for as many weapons as they have, I don't need to list them off for you. But the thing that I really think is that separates them from other teams, not only in terms of goaltending as well, because Vasilevsky played phenomenal last night, and he continues to just, another one, get better and better and better and play with more confidence and make saves when he needs to and when the team needs him to. If you've been a listener of the podcast, you know those are two different things. But when you're looking at this team as to what separates them from most teams, and you could look at any Stanley Cup winning team in the last 5 years, it's been offensive production from your defensive core, your blue liners, your back end. And you saw it in this game that was the thing that really helped out the Lightning start it off. I mean, whether or not Toronto was aware coming into this game or kind of was on the lookout for that, I still think that setting the tone from shots deep really just helps your team get going early on, because it really injects a lot of life. Because I think when you're looking at scoring goals from beyond deep, from beyond the slot, and that also counts, you know, the wing sides, the circles, that really, I think, sets the tone, because when you're shooting from that deep, I think it really gets the goaltender thinking. And obviously the last thing you want in any game is a goaltender that's thinking too much. You just want them to act purely on reaction and instinct instead of, thinking, where is this going to go? Where is that shot going to go? And the Lightning have really lacked that this year, being able to get that amount of scoring or production from their defensive line. A lot of that has to do with Mikhail Sergachev not performing well and then obviously being out for the long run. Victor Hedman at times just kind of looking a lot older than he really is. And then kind of just that drop off that we have seen after that in terms of scoring, because, let's be honest here. We're not going to get production out of Chernak. We're not going to get production out of Dumba. Those guys are there to be the anchors, to be the guys that are the last line of defense almost. And then that third line that you get from Lilleberg and Fleury, that's kind of a toss-up there. But last night, you had three defensemen that were on the stat sheet. Fleury, Radish, and of course Hedman on his goal. And I don't normally play too much of an emphasis on this, but it's very nice to see, and it's very encouraging to see when you have your defensemen, all your defensemen, in the positives on their plus and minuses. Now, you could attribute that to just overall team defensive play. You could attribute that to just Vasilevsky playing well and setting the stage for your guys to stat pad almost. But, and I'm not saying that's going to be a night-to-night thing where, all right, we got to get all our defensemen on the positives. No, that's not something that you want. If you want to know how well, really, your defensemen are playing and how they're contributing, because I firmly believe, and I've said this probably a billion times since we've had our show start in February of 2020, is that really you want to really measure it by looking at the shots. And I've always been a huge advocate for throwing a ton of pucks from deep, from the blue line, not only because you want to have that aspect of your game going, but it all the opportunities that it really creates from there. Last night, Fleury had 3 shots. Dumba even had 1. Radish had 2. Hedman had 2. And that's what you want. The Lightning had 25 shots on goal last night, and 8 of them came from your defensemen. And that really shows you that you're giving yourself as well as the opposing goaltender tons of different looks. You don't want them expecting anything. And that's why I've always been going crazy about, Stamkos, having one-timers constantly, 3 to 4 times per game. That doesn't help anybody. So when you have that look, like I said, you don't expect every shot to go through, but it sets up rebounds, second chances, weird bounces. My saying has always been, throw the puck towards the net. As long as they're responsible shots, good things will happen. And last night we saw that. Good things happen. Like I said, you got 8 shots from your defenseman, and good things happened. And I think that that's going to be a huge, important part for the Lightning going forward. It's going to be an important part tonight. It's going to be an important part in the Columbus game, the Pittsburgh game, the Ottawa game, Buffalo, Toronto, Washington, and the playoffs. It's going to be, like I said, it was a big deal during the 2 back-to-back Stanley Cup wins, and it's going to be a big deal then, and it's only going to get better because, and it's a shame because if and when Sergachev comes back, as well as he's been playing, most likely, unless Cooper has other ideas, I think Lilleberg is the odd man out here. because Fleury has been playing a lot better than this year, I think, especially over the last couple of months. Lilleberg, I love him. I know a lot of Lightning fans love him too. It's just, we've seen it in years past with other players. There's not having a place for someone in the lineup is usually a good thing. That usually means that everybody else is playing very well. It's a good problem to have, especially with a player that is playing well. So, yeah, it's very encouraging to see, and I expect the Lightning to continue emphasizing that point in their game going forward, especially in tonight's game against Montreal. So, coming up in just a little bit, you guessed it, we're going to be previewing tonight's game against the Montreal Canadiens. But first, we're going to talk about our last sponsor of today's show, and that is our friends over at Robinhood Retirement. Now, did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you could still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. So, as always, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Go ahead, subscribe to our channel. I cannot wait till we post this video. And, obviously, I always look forward to the feedback from Lightning fans. I always do. I always love that back and forth, whether we respond to it or not. Usually I just like to sit back and just watch all the comments come out. I'm also looking forward to, because it happens every time, seeing the Toronto Maple Leaf fans. That's going to be really, really nice to see. I just like to see, I think what we should do at the end of the year, because I just love the reception we've been getting when we do our Locked On Lightning episode in the offseason, year in review. We're definitely going to address some of the interesting comments. If you didn't check it, the last episode, there was a comment in our YouTube channel where there was a gentleman, I assumed he was a Red Wings fan. The only reason I'm bringing it up because it was so laughable. Usually I try not to respond to such stupid comments, but this one was pretty humorous, where he basically was criticizing my opinion on one of the goals of Cirelli's that was taken back by review, and attributed that to Lightning Southern hockey fans, which if the guy listened to anything about my episode, he could just tell from my voice I'm not even from the South. It's just a funny thing. So go ahead, check that out. If you want to go ahead, comment, get back to them or he or whoever it was. But just be respectful. So we're taking a look at the Montreal game tonight. Now, Montreal, as we all know, they're pretty much out of it. They're done. I mean, they're not making the playoffs. They were a team this year that I really thought was, I didn't think that they were going to be anywhere near close to a playoff spot, but I didn't think that they were going to be closer to a lottery spot. They come into this game with a record of 29, 33, and 12. That equals 70 points on the year. Their plus minus differential is just, their goal differential is just atrocious, minus 47, which, if I am correct, definitely equals out to one of the worst in the league. Actually, no, it's the Sharks are goal differential of minus 133. That's God. If any of you come into contact with Locked On Sharks host JD Young, be nice to him. He's hurting right now. So we're taking a look at this game. I expect probably Tompkins to play tonight. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I would expect probably Tompkins is going to get a look tonight. And that doesn't necessarily mean this is a throwaway game. Obviously, the objective tonight is to go out there, win, go out there and just invoke your will upon the Canadians. This is a game where the Lightning, it could get very ugly very quickly. And what I mean by that is that I wouldn't be surprised if the game is practically over by the first intermission. Now, you want to see a competitive game for the whole night and maybe having Tompkins in net and not having Vasilevsky in net, or if it turns out to be Johansson, whoever, maybe it'll be a little bit closer, but I think we're going to just see, same old Lightning, maybe a little bit shakier goaltending. This is a game that I fully expect the Lightning to just go out and, blow the doors off. I wouldn't be surprised if they hang 6 goals or even 7, maybe 8. This is a game that you just continue to fine-tune what you've been working on. We're going to see more of the same in this game. We're going to see a lot of involvement from the top 2 lines, really. Probably a little bit more ice time from that third line, especially if it's kind of starting to run away early on. I would imagine Cooper's going to give some of the lower lines and combinations a little bit more ice time, just to kind of give other guys a little bit more of a breather. You have a lot of tough games coming up. You have the Penguins, like I said, Ottawa, Columbus. It's one of those games where in the coming weeks, actually, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see a little bit more of Cooper starting to pull back on the reins of some players, maybe give less ice time to Hedman in certain spots. This is probably the last game that Vasilevsky is probably going to probably sit out for the rest of the game. It's, this is, like I said, this is just a continue to work on things to kind of game. But still, you got to go out there and take care of business and win. So I'm predicting this game to be probably, I would say 5-2, maybe 6-2. This is also a game that obviously, and I'm sure the Lightning are very conscious of this, and they're still working on it, or not working on it, but that's still their goal, is that you definitely want to continue to close that gap to Toronto. Toronto's at 95 points. The Lightning are at 91. And, you got to collect points as much as possible. Like I said, until they are mathematically unable to catch up to them, I firmly believe that is still the goal for this Lightning team. And it continues tonight against the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, like I said, this is also a game where I wouldn't be surprised if the Canadiens overperform. We see it all the time with lesser teams against the Lightning, whether it be in the beginning of the season, middle of the season, end of the season. For some reason, lesser teams that are out of it, they always come out of the gate swinging. They always somehow, for whatever reason, break out a better performance than what they average on a nightly basis against Tampa. I don't know if it's just maybe, the big bad Lightning are in town, or, they're playing them and teams are still sour about other, them dominating the league as much as they had over the last couple of years. So let me know in the comments below. Yes, I'm saying 6-2. I'm saying the usual suspects tonight. I still want to see more involvement from the blue line. You had a very good starting off point last night against a very good team. Now you just got to continue that against a lesser team. So we'll be back tomorrow to talk about a win, because I fully guarantee the Lightning will win tonight. And we'll take a look towards the weekend as they continue to march their way to the Stanley Cup playoffs. We're going to talk about the win tomorrow, recap that, talk about some players on this team, as well as the Pittsburgh game over the weekend. So as always, you could follow us on our social media pages, LO_Lightning on Twitter, as well as Lockdown_Lightning on Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter, DankyDank, DENKYD8NK. Please go ahead, subscribe to the podcast wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Comment below, hit that thumbs up button so it helps the episode grow and reach more people. So that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.